Game of Thrones, the door is over, but we're just getting started here on the Game of Thrones post-show recap here on postshowrecaps.com. And here are the two guys who are never holding the damn door for anybody ever again. I'm Rob Cesternino. Here is Josh Wigler. Josh, oh boy.
Oh gosh. Oh man, did we just get red weddinged? Like that
Hodor.
Kind of feels like it. That was Hodor. That was really tough.
Yeah,
that
Hodor.
Was very, very bad.
It's going to be a rough in memoriam segment at the Throners this year.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think you know what? I think that you could have expected 1-1 the Giant to carry some momentum forward from his win last year. I feel like one of the Hodors is going to get this year. I think Hold the Door is a front runner for the victory at the Hodor category.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Josh, this was tough.
Yeah, it was really difficult. Really difficult. I'm currently in Los Angeles at good friend of Post Show Recaps' Kevin Mahadeo's house. Was watching with him, and he just kept his there was smoke coming out of his ears. There was
Did
smoke
he cry?
coming out of mine. I came close. It was really, really difficult to sit through. That's a character. That's like if you did that to Hurley on Lost. That's like if you were to take this really, really beloved, gentle-hearted character who's really never done anything wrong ever and just ripped him to shreds via zombies. That's just not cool. It really sucks. It's very devastating.
Okay, well, we are here live to talk about it all. We're going to take your questions, your reactions to this very big episode here on Game of Thrones. We're taking your tweets, hashtag PS Recaps, also the questions on our YouTube channel at postshowrecaps.com/YouTube. A lot to get through, a lot of new information coming to light about Bran, the Night's King, the three-eyed raven of it all. So a lot of stuff to do here tonight, Josh, on the two-time podcast award nominated post-show recaps. How about that? There's the silver lining tonight that we just got word that the podcast award nominations were announced, and post-show recaps is nominated for Best TV and Film Podcast and the People's Choice Podcast of the Year for 2015. 2016.
Really incredible. That's awesome. Really excited about that. We work really hard. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it comes very naturally. Mm-hmm. We work very hard here on Post Show Recaps. So thank you guys for pushing us to the nominations. That's really cool. Hold the awards. We're coming.
Hold the awards. The live voting opens up 1 week from tonight, so we'll give it more information on that. I just wanted to announce that was sort of some breaking news tonight in addition to everything going on here with Game of Thrones. All right, so Josh, all right, this is your beat. You've been following this story for years and years and years, and put this in perspective for us.
I think, listen, we've seen a lot of characters die on Game of Thrones, and we've seen heavy hitters die on Game of Thrones. Ned Stark dies at the end of the first season. That is a huge tone setter that anybody in this world can be killed. No one is safe. All men can be killed. We lose Robb Stark and Catelyn Stark in Season 3 as a reminder, just in case you forgot that lots of really important people die in this story. Here's a really stark, painful reminder. We saw what happened to Jon Snow in Season 5. Plenty of reason to believe that he was coming back for story purposes, but that's really the exception to the rule. When you die on Game of Thrones, more often than not, you stay dead. With a character like Hodor, I don't think you see that guy again, although, that being said, he does die north of the wall, and we have seen what happens to bodies that are not burned north of the wall. We could be looking at zombie Hodor in the future, which is really brutal. But I think the point being that, if there were characters that you feel like they are untouchable because they are lovable, they are beloved, they haven't done anything wrong. Hodor is kind of this, sort of pop culture icon. I feel like you could go up to somebody with, passing knowledge of Game of Thrones, but not deep awareness of the show, and even they would probably know what a Hodor is, or at least that it's a sound that you make when you are a fan of the show. And now, not only will those people will know that this is an event, I think the people who love Hodor, the people who are huge Game of Thrones fans, this word that was such a beloved rallying call now has this really very dark connotation.
No, I disagree, Josh. I think that Hodor now lives on beyond Game of Thrones. I think that you and I were headed into the bank, and you're right behind me. You're like, Hodor. It's like, oh, okay, I got the door for you, buddy. No problem. I think
So
that that's going to be a thing. Yeah.
it's gonna be a shorthand in the modern day that everyone knows that Hodor means hold the door.
Yes, I think among Games of Thrones fans, I think you go anywhere with your Game of Thrones buddy, and it's like, okay, Hodor, okay, got it.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, test that out this week and let me know how that goes. And if you do say that to any Game of Thrones fans, let me know if they hold the door for you or if they break down crying in front of you and you ruin somebody's day. I'm very curious to see which way it goes.
Yeah. All right, Josh, I want to just talk through the logistics of this from what we understand. Now, at the point, okay, so Bran is in sort of the green dream state during all of this, okay? So
Right.
he's back and he is watching all of this. Hodor when they get him waking up, did Bran warg into the young Hodor, the older Hodor? And if that's the case, when Hodor dies, is Bran still inside him? What's going on there?
It's a lot to unpack, and it's really complicated, and I think that it's going to be difficult to fully unpack even, an hour or two after the episode is aired, but as best as we can do it. So Bran is in the past. He's back at Winterfell. He's there with the Three-Eyed Raven. The Three-Eyed Raven says to Bran, it's time for you to become me. He's giving him the download of all of the stuff that Bran needs to know. That's what he's trying to do here. So Bran is back there. At the same time, the Night's King and the White Walkers storm the cave. They go to the cave. They're going to kill everybody inside. Mira is trying to wake up Bran, needs him to warg into Hodor so that he can have, so that she can have Bran's help and Hodor's help, because Hodor is doing his thing where he kind of gets catatonic when he's really, really afraid. Bran in the past hears Mira calling to him. We need you to warg into Hodor. The Three-Eyed Raven says, listen to your friend Brandon. And so Bran hops into Hodor in the present while he is simultaneously existing in the past. So this is an upgrade in Bran's power level at this point, that he can both be green-seeing down the rabbit hole into the past of Winterfell, while simultaneously in present day he is warged inside of Hodor. So now he, as Hodor with Mira, are pulling the sled. They are pulling Bran's warging and green-seeing body out of the door. People die. Poor Summer. We'll talk about Summer died as well. Summer is going. The Three-Eyed Raven is dead as well at this point, and they blow up the thing. A few of the whites come through, and Hodor has to lean back on the door, and he is instructed to hold the door. Mira says, hold the door. That is as much a command to Hodor, I think, as it is to Bran, who, as Hodor, is holding the door. In the past, he can hear the things in the present. He looks at young Willis. Willis's eyes roll into the back of his head the way that someone's eyes roll when that person is being warged into or is doing the warging. And I think that the suggestion there is that Bran can not only warg, he can not only green see, but he can warg while he's green seeing. He can warg while he is in the past, and he is warging into young Willis. Young Willis is experiencing what's happening in the present. He is repeating the final words that he is told, this final order of hold the door, hold the door, hold the door, and is experiencing his own eventual final moments, while Bran in the past is watching this happen and realizing, holy crap, Hodor is dying. I'm kind of responsible for it, and I also named Hodor. Like, all of this is why Hodor became Hodor. Very complicated stuff. That's as far as I've gotten it so far.
Okay, so I hope you don't mind if I just continue this press conference and keep this going. It has Hodor now his entire life been armed with the consciousness does the young Hodor know what his eventual destiny is, and he is aware of this, and that is why he is saying Hodor his entire life.
That's the great question. That's really, that's really hard to know. Is it something where it's his destiny? Where, well, obviously this is predestined. I think that this is, it's a whatever happened moment. Once again, to call back to Lost. This episode, by the way, directed by Jack Bender, who is like the director of Lost. He was the most frequent director there. I digress. I think that Hodor,
and it was a beautiful episode.
It was a fantastic episode. It was really excellent. One of the, maybe the best of the season so far. I think that Hodor, like, you can argue, did he know this? Did he know that this is where he was going? Christian Nairn, the actor who plays Hodor, always said that, like, he put a lot into those Hodors. He is, certainly in his mind having this one-sided conversation. Or is it that, his brain is really just fried, and this incredibly intense thing that he experienced left him a little simpler, left him with an enormously limited vocabulary and a new nickname, and he doesn't know where he's headed. I don't know. I think that that's up to interpretation a little bit right now. I'm not entirely sure where I stand on it yet.
Okay. We've seen Bran be able to warg into Hodor before in the past. Why was this different? What is the why is this more advantageous to be able to warg into people from the past?
Well, this is a big deal. I mean, we've seen Bran warg into people in the past of the show, but not in like the history. Like, it's a lot to parse out. In previous episodes of Game of Thrones, Bran has been able to warg into Hodor, into animals, all of that. We have never seen him while he's been on one of his time-traveling adventures warging into another individual in the past. That could potentially be huge. Now we know with certainty that Bran's actions, moving forward in the present of the show and the future as his future is developing on the show, that if he is tripping back in time and he goes to Winterfell and he wargs into Hodor and causes this insane brain meltdown for Hodor to turn that man into Hodor, then the possibilities are out there that Bran has also been the architect of some other things that have happened in Game of Thrones.
The builder,
history.
would you say?
Yes, and that's one of the big theories, is that the person who built the wall is a legendary figure in Westeros lore named Bran the Builder. So a lot of people are wondering, could that actually be Bran Stark? Is it not just that Bran Stark is named after that guy, but is Bran Stark going to somehow trip back down the rabbit hole, go, to the north and build that wall somehow? Seems like a difficult task. Who knows how that would happen? But that's not an impossibility. Like, if he could go back in time and warg into the Night's King or another White Walker, and we saw, like, the Night's King, do, like, his crazy frost earthquake type of thing, could he warg into someone that powerful and use their magic to create the wall? Not an impossibility. So, a lot of very Valyrian foil hat theories, they're really going to start emerging if they weren't already there, but they have solider ground than they've ever had, with the fact that we know for sure that Bran has done some things in the past, had always done those things, and they affected things so much that we had a very beloved character thanks to Bran Stark's actions.
So the three-eyed raven, Josh, I have so many questions about what he was doing tonight. It seems like that he is the one taking Bran on all of these green-seeing visions, yet here we are where it seems to me, okay, the three-eyed raven is showing him, okay, this big White Walker army, showing him the Night's King, and then the Night's King grabs Bran, and it's like, oh, well, he touched you. Now he can come here. This was bad. So why is the three-eyed raven involved in that? Does the Night's King have the ability to hijack Bran's green seeing?
Right.
Is he like Freddy Krueger?
Yeah, he kind of looks like him, right? He's like the blue Freddy Kruegs. Yeah, Bran in that moment, he, I believe, is going rogue. That's some rogue warging he's doing right there. Bran is sort of sneaking around in that scene right before he goes back and looks at the undead army and looks at the Night's King and everything. So that's an unsupervised trip. That's a trip that he really shouldn't have gone on without a grown-up present. So I think that's why the Raven's like, no, he touched you. Granted, maybe the Raven should have told him that that was a possibility, and that really would have prevented Bran from risking that. But I think that this was obviously not the preferred outcome for the three-eyed Raven. And Bran, who's young, he's exploring, he's just figuring out these sweet new powers that he has. He takes advantage of them, and he takes them a little too far, and this is what we get.
So then when the three-eyed raven says, okay, now I got to teach you everything. Are you ready? No. What is the significance of, again, going back to Winterfell and watching the Starks, getting ready to leave again, other than that's where young Hodor is? Is there any significance to being in that moment? It seems like that the three-eyed raven, of all the different things that he could be showing Bran in the history of Westeros, that seemed like a pretty insignificant moment they were looking at during when all of hell is breaking loose.
Right. Well, maybe historically, sure. But in terms of like the short term, the near-term importance. I think it has immediate urgency. And if the three-eyed raven is, kind of as omnipotent as maybe we believe, or at least if he has seen a lot more than we have seen, then perhaps the three-eyed raven knows, at least in this moment, like, first order of business, Bran has to turn Hodor into Hodor so that he can hold the door so that Bran can escape. So I think that could be part of it. I also think it's not, necessarily off the table that, we're going to keep seeing Bran. When Bran is being pulled out by Mira, he's still in the past. He's still there. Is part of Bran still going to be tripping through these visions even though the three-eyed raven is gone? He was basically saying, now I need to make sure that you're me. He's like giving him the download. Is that going to continue in the weeks ahead? Is that possible?
Sure, certainly is. I mean, we expected, I think, to go back to the Tower of Joy before we were going back to that scene back at Winterfell with the young Stark family. Now, I believe that Bran and Mira are armed in some very heavy plot armor.
Yeah, I think so too.
Josh, doesn't it seem like that they have zero chance of getting away from this Night's King and White Walker army that really just completely sacked Children of the Forest, everything that's standing in their way, just obliterated? We have a young woman, 14, 15 years old, pulling a sled with a 6-foot-tall man on it. How far are they getting out in front of the White Walkers?
Yeah, this is difficult. And it's very cold. They made it before, but they had, 2 other people plus a direwolf with them the last time they made this trip, and they were still struggling. They still had a really difficult time. So this is really bad for them.
Maybe it's downhill on the way down to the wall.
That's right. So they're just literally just going to sled right through the wall. It's going to take 5 minutes. No, I think I think that, there's not the impossibility that the Night's King doesn't want to kill Bran. Maybe he wants to use Bran. Maybe he has his own purpose for Bran. So maybe what could happen, this wouldn't benefit Mira, you wouldn't think, but maybe the White Walkers catch up to Bran, and rather than killing him, maybe now Bran is kind of eyes and ears in their storyline, and we start to learn more about them. We certainly started to learn more about them this week, in the sense that the White Walkers weren't always White Walkers. They were human beings at one point in time. So maybe Bran is going to have some eyes on that.
Far be it from me to nitpick the great Night's King, but in terms of, you get the sense that he was trying to find the three-eyed raven after all this time. Kind of a big tell, the one tree that exists north of the wall, that happened to be where the three-eyed raven lived. You would think that the Night's King would have checked that spot before.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe, for whatever reason...
Kind of an obvious hideout.
Seems like a landmark. It does seem like a landmark, especially the tree with, the back door. Like,
yeah.
You'd think you would find that. I think that would be on the radar at some point. But is that the only tree? I don't believe that that's true. I mean,
we've seen sort of the big wide shot of it's the only thing around there.
Well, there is also, it's a very vast expanse of land, for one. It is also, there is a location north of the wall on those maps of Westeros that are released with the books called the Forbidden Forest. There's foliage around. It's a big place. If they're missing one tree in a snowfield, I'm not going to get too mad about it.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's not get too hung up on that. Will in the chat says the children of the forest were protecting it, but why couldn't they protect it today? Because he touched Bran in the dream, that's why?
I think that's a big part of it.
Okay. All right. I can't wrap my head around that tonight. Too much going on. Of course, poor Summer gets lost in the shuffle, unlike Shaggy Dog, which had a whole week of people mourning for Shaggy Dog. Summer, is like an afterthought.
No, a little bit of an afterthought, but I think in the same way that, and probably not quite as powerfully, certainly not quite as powerfully, I think, as Grey Wind during the Red Wedding, when Robb Stark's direwolf dies there. That's a really, really horrible, brutal moment, and you get the whimper, and what's awful about that is that Grey Wind doesn't have a chance. He's locked up, and he just gets crossbowed, whereas Summer is dying, throwing himself into the fray, jumping into the fight and trying to do his thing. It really lasts for half a second before he is just torn to bits.
Completely exploded.
Maybe play that one out a little bit further. It would have been nice if Bran was able to split the warging, double warg, and he could have warged into both Hodor and Summer, because I feel like he's fought really well as Summer, in the past. But I think that, we're going to look back on it. In the immediate aftermath, we're losing Hodor, who is a guy that we really never thought that we would lose. Or at least I never really thought we would lose Hodor. I think that is the most immediately devastating thing. I don't think it's going to be lost that we lost Summer as well. I think that we will eventually come to, soak in this whole major scene, this whole huge experience that's just happened, and Summer's death will be, a really sad part of it. But it sucks. And that really blows. There's only 2 direwolves left. Yeah. And only one of them on the show.
Yeah. Ghost and Nymeria is out there somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe Nymeria will re-enter the picture at some point. At least Ghost is still alive, but you gotta imagine not for that much longer.
That'll be a huge pop.
All these direwolves are done.
Yeah, I think it's rough stuff for the direwolves. Okay, and then we'll see where Bran goes on his continuing adventures, and I'm sure more on this during our feedback show, which we're actually going to be doing live in person this week. This is very exciting.
Yeah. That's right, at Run It Up Reno.
Yeah, Josh and I are going to be headed to Reno this week, and we'll have our live feedback show. We'll tell you how to get your questions in later on in the show. All right, let's bounce around the rest of Westeros. And
you don't want to talk about the fact that we learned how White Walkers are made. This is a big deal.
Sure. Night's King, and how the Night's King got made.
Yeah, this is a really big deal. So is that confirmed? Was that guy the Night's King, that guy who gets some obsidian buried into his heart? Is that what we're supposed to believe?
That's what I was thinking, but unless you tell me to believe differently.
No, I just don't know if that was definitive. But, you watch these episodes and you stick around for, like, David Benioff and Dan Weiss talking about, what went into the making of the episode, what went into, the story decisions that went on in the episode. I was, really still kind of traumatized by this Hodor thing. So I was half reeling from what went on there. But I think that they did suggest, if not outright say, that was the Night's King. Like, you're now seeing how that guy was made. But it's pretty wild. I mean, we've seen the Night's King turn humans into White Walkers before. Mm-hmm. That was his introduction on the show back in Season 4, Episode 4, when he turns one of Craster's babies into a White Walker. So we know that he's had that power. But I don't know about you. Did you think that those guys were humans once upon a time before they were what they were? Did you kind of think that White Walkers were just this fully formed, their own species?
I feel like that, and I think I must have, this is probably something from the books, not the TV show, and it sort of gets blended together in my mind. But is that talked about in the books? And I feel like that one of the Lord Commanders of the Night's Watch was, am I making that up?
Well, there's a story of a character in history named the Night's King in the books, who is a former Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, fell in love and had a very amorous relationship with like a female White Walker and turned into a White Walker himself, or some nonsense like that I don't think that the show has been leaning into. I think that whatever origin of this main #1 bad guy is on the show seems to be at least adjusted, if not wholly different from what's going on in the books. But I imagine the mechanics of how White Walkers came to be, I would imagine that would be a monstrous deviation if that's not what George R.R. Martin is planning in the books, but none of that has ever been outright confirmed. This is the show being past the books sort of territory.
So if the Children of the Forest made the White Walkers, then what happened? This is just like some sort of like Terminator type situation where they just became sentient. And they came on once they came online.
Yeah, Skynet came online. Became self-aware. These White Walkers became self-aware, and I think that they created a monster that they couldn't control. They turned man into White Walker in order to destroy man. And the way that this war worked out once upon a time was that the Children of the Forest, they didn't like that human beings were showing up here in Westeros and cutting down their trees and moving in, and so there was this big war. And you knew in the history books that the White Walkers were the big enemy, and the Children of the Forest and mankind, they teamed together to stop them. But you didn't know that the Children of the Forest also created the White Walkers. So that adds some depth to this conflict that used to exist, and also this peace that had to exist between the Children of the Forest and man. It's like everyone screwed up. Everyone made a mistake, including the children, and arguably the children's mistake was really the catastrophic one, and it's kind of their fault that the White Walkers are storming the Seven Kingdoms or are on their way to do it. Although you could also blame the dudes, the men, for moving into where they shouldn't have moved into. It's everybody's fault, really.
Josh, are the Children of the Forest completely wiped out after tonight?
Great question. I mean, unless they had other headquarters, like if they had other little hideaways, that looked like it. It didn't look like anyone was making it out of there alive after like that one final child of the forest like pulled the Vasquez and blew the thing up.
Yeah.
You always were an a-hole Gorman. Like if that was, the last of the children of the forest, we might never see those people again on the show. And that's brutal. That's a very ancient species just wiped out.
I watch these shows with my closed captioning on. You know what that character's name is?
What's the character's name?
Leaf.
Leaf.
Leaf. Leaf.
Wow. She flew. She truly flew.
She flew. Okay. All right. Let's talk about Sansa and Littlefinger. They meet up. And we've talked about Littlefinger's teleportation skills here on Game of Thrones. He's the only, like every other character, it takes a season to get from one place to the next. But we see, last week he was in the Vale. This week he's up at the Wall.
Right. He travels by
map. Specifically. Yeah.
He travels by map. He gets around really, really fast. They were holed up in Moat Cailin. He gets from Moat Cailin to Molestown. It feels like it happens in a day. So man, I mean, like, if you're looking like for training on like speed training, don't ask Barry Allen. Go look up Peter Baelish. He's the guy you want to talk to.
Yeah, he's got that. And so he comes to Sansa and basically tries to patch things up with her, and she is not having it. She is really not very nice scene. Really, really great Sansa scene.
Great Sansa scene. Really fun to see Sansa tossing it back at Peter Baelish. Peter Baelish, who has always underestimated Sansa. Everybody has always underestimated Sansa. And to see Sansa come in with such ferocity and say to Littlefinger, did you know about Ramsay? Because if you didn't, you're an idiot. And if you did, you're my enemy. And I thought that was great. I love Sansa coming into her own. I love Sansa becoming this leader and becoming proud and decisive and making calls and feeling really ready to take on the North and rally the houses and get a Stark back in Winterfell. I feel like you and I are going to be on a similar page on this one. Wasn't this the time to start manipulating Littlefinger back? Like, now is the time. Like, Littlefinger shows up. He's got the Knights of the Vale. He's looking to help. He's looking to make good. You clearly see through Littlefinger at this point, Sansa. Like, at this point, you've got Littlefinger's number. Is now the time where you say, like, you do the Daenerys Targaryen thing of, like, oh, I'm just, this, young girl who doesn't know the ways of war, and then you roast those people alive with dragonfire. Isn't this the time for Sansa to take Littlefinger in, take those Knights of the Vale, use those forces, conquer Winterfell, then hang Littlefinger, just take him out? Isn't that the move?
Yeah, it really had felt like Sansa was on the rise all season long, and we were feeling really good about Sansa, but I just am starting to feel like Sansa got a big head all of a sudden. It's like Sansa really is gotten, and in Game of Thrones, like, this is like never really a good move. I feel like that the characters that get kind of cocky about where they stand and how much power they have kind of get brought back down to earth.
Yeah, oftentimes those cocky characters are not so cocky after they are acting that way towards Ramsay Bolton. In fact. So yeah, I think that Sansa, is she getting a little big for her britches? I don't know. I mean, she's certainly kicking butt. Like she's putting plans together. She's lying very well. She's allocating resources in a smart way. I just think this one with Littlefinger, I just think that there was some room there for her to do something really, a little schemy with that character, and I think that would have been very fun. That being said, she went through an enormous trauma. She went through such a terrible, terrible, terrible situation with the Boltons in Winterfell. As she says to Littlefinger, you took me away from people who murdered my family and threw me away to other monsters who murdered my family. It's just trading monsters at this point. Arguably, these ones were worse because she still physically feels the damage of what Ramsay Bolton did.
Which trading monsters is one thing when you're doing Pokemon, but not with with Sansa.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that you want I don't know. Is there
Snorlax?
Yeah, Snorlax. Yeah, Snorlax to this conversation if you don't know what a Pokemon is. Yeah. Ramsay Chew. I don't think that you want to choose you. Yeah.
So with Sansa and Jon sort of like planning out this attack, Sansa's like, "Come on, what are we doing here? Come on, well, let's go. Let's move the pieces down the board. Let's go sack Winterfell. We got these people. We'll go get the Karstarks back." And even Davos is like, well, I don't know. She's like, "Come on, what are we doing here?"
I love Davos. Like, Karstarks kind of probably hate you guys. Your brother did chop the head of their house's head off. Not really going to forgive that anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of don't know how Sansa knew about the Umbers giving Rickon to Ramsay.
Yeah, was that like a PS in the Ramsay letter?
Maybe.
PS. In case you're trying to amass forces and you're looking at House Umber, don't. They're with me. They're the dudes who gave me Rickon. Come and see.
Yeah, and so they're trying to figure out what they're gonna do. In addition, that Sansa has time for arts and crafts. Also, I was really impressed with Sansa. She came up with sort of like a new Stark line of clothing for her and Jon to be wearing, including like she really has mastered what would you call that, leatherworking, where she's able to sort of get that Stark insignia on like some sort of leather garment for Jon.
You know, a girl needs hobbies. Everybody needs a hobby, and especially one who's been through such like awful circumstances as Sansa Stark. Like, you really throw yourself into like the other thing. And like, I think for her, for some people that's books, some people it's cooking. For her, it's knitting. It's like leather work. She's really into fashion, so good for her.
Is it great. Like the Sons of Anarchy, where they just have a bunch of like Stark insignia, where they can just sort of like sew it onto different things?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, give me your patch. You're out of the Starks.
Yeah. Yeah, the Starks of Anarchy. I like it.
Yeah. And then, so Sansa, she gets this piece of information. Hey, Blackfish is up and running down with the Tullys, and so in the Riverlands.
Yeah,
so,
Blackfish is playing at Riverrun. I don't think that anyone has been so excited about Blackfish playing anywhere since that moment. But yeah, she sends Brienne. She sends Brienne to go check that out. And Brienne doesn't want to leave because she does not trust Davos or Melisandre. She's really thumbs down on those guys.
My favorite part of that was when she was talking about Jon, and she's like, Jon's here. I was like, yeah, I guess he's nice. I mean, he's kind of brooding.
Yeah. That
very funny.
I really liked that. Yeah.
So we're gonna send Brienne down to Riverrun.
That's the plan. So Brienne, this sucks because she has a Valyrian sword. That would really come in handy. You've got to imagine that the White Walkers they're really barreling toward that wall pretty soon. So to have one of your few Valyrian weapons leave, that sucks. But yeah, Brienne is going to Riverrun. Goodbye to the Brienne and Sansa dream team. That was really fun while it lasted.
But okay, she got her where she needed to be. Will Tormund be accompanying Brienne?
Yeah, well, he was on horseback, right? So, like, is he going out to find other northern houses? Is he going with Jon? Or is he going to say to Jon, like, look, you got this, right? I got to take care of everything. I know what Jessica Leese is hoping for. I know that Jess is really team Giants Brienne. So hopefully that's going to continue to be a thing. We really are.
Where did we leave this with Sansa and Jon?
What do you mean? Where did we leave?
Like we're on the move. We're headed to Winterfell.
It's recruitment. It's recruitment time. We're trying to get the few houses that they think that they can get. There's the major ones.
It's like the Iowa caucus. They're like knocking on doors. Like, hey, so we're gonna storm Winterfell. We want to see if you want to be on board with this. We have some pamphlets.
Yes, it's a grassroots campaign at this point.
If you want to caucus for us.
Yeah, they're going door to door. Caucus the wagon. Yeah, they are. They're all leaving, and they're trying to take care of that. And Jon identifies a few houses that they think, like, if we could rally this like couple dozen houses, like that's going to be enough to handle the Umbers and the Karstarks. We'll be able to make some moves there. One of those houses was, if you didn't notice, the Mormonts. The Mormonts are going to be in play. Jon obviously has some history with them. We love Jorah, so that will be fun. Let's see how that works out. If Jon can get some bears on his side, maybe Tormund wants to be around for that.
Okay, good. All right, let's switch around. Instead of the politics of the North, let's go out to Pike, where the Kingsmoot primaries are going on, and it seems like we have a new king of the Iron Islands.
You're on, Rob.
Yeah, you're on. Let's make Pike great again. He has a plan. And that plan is going to be to go team up with Daenerys Targaryen. I don't know if she's in on that plan. I can't imagine she's going to like that plan.
Yeah, I don't feel like she's going to look at Euron or hear anything about that guy and be like, oh yeah, that's somebody that I want to work with. That being said, Daenerys is the kind of person who, did what I described earlier, what I feel like Sansa should have done to Littlefinger, where she'll play along. She'll play ball for a little while, and then she'll roast you alive with Dragonfire and steal your crap. So I could see her doing that to Euron.
What crap do they have that Theon and Yara already stole all their crap?
Well, that's the thing, and I feel like, this is great news if you're a Theon Greyjoy fan. Like, if you're a Yara Greyjoy fan, I feel like those two characters could very much align with Daenerys Targaryen, and you could see, like, Yara and Dany potentially being simpatico, like, two people who are really strong-minded, have no respect for the leadership of Westeros, would totally be on board. I think that could be a combined powerhouse. But Euron, I don't think Dany would be on board with. But if you're a Theon and Yara fan, I feel like this could be very good news. Dany needs ships, and I feel like those three personalities, I think push come to shove, you could see them melding together decently well. And also, Tyrion knows Theon. They know each other from back in season 1. And they've both been through a lot since then, so maybe they can find some common ground.
I don't know. That seems like a little bit of a stretch. I can't feel like that they totally are on the same page where Dany wants to sit on the Iron Throne. Seems like Yara, that she was saying that their move is like, no, we just need to stay on the water, that we can't hold land. Anytime we try to hold land in Westeros, that's a problem for us. So let's just get the fleet going out there. So I don't know if necessarily they have enough mutual interest there.
Well, I think that, Yara and Theon are at the very least right now, Euron says, like, let's go murder those two people. Let's go murder my niece and my nephew. Yara and Theon left in a hurry because they obviously sensed danger was on the way. They also were there at the Kingsmoot and heard Euron's victory speech of, we're going to go line up, we're going to align ourselves with the Targaryens. So doesn't it make sense for Yara and Theon to take their show on the road, or on the open sea as it were, sail to Meereen, beat Euron to the punch and say, hey, Daenerys Targaryen, let's team up. You can have the land. We can have the sea. We can come up with some sort of thing. And can you help us kill our uncle? Because that guy's a lunatic.
Plot-wise, it makes sense in terms of that all of the ships in Dany's fleet went on fire. Here is a fleet of ships on the run. I just feel like that I'm still not seeing necessarily why Yara and Theon are teaming up with Dany, but I guess we'll get more on that as it develops.
We can chew on that in the feedback show. Let's move on to other stuff for now.
Okay. Let's go to let's talk about Dany and what she's up to. We saw her with Jorah, and another moving scene tonight with Jorah and Dany, and she's like, I don't know what to do with you. I can't get rid of you. I can't keep you. He's like, I have to leave. I have to leave. Look at this. Look at how bad this is getting.
Yeah, this is really nasty. You don't want to touch this. But Dany saying, don't turn your back on me. I order you to go find the cure. And her just crying and this major outpouring of emotion of Jorah, confessing his love. I love you. She didn't even say I know, which I feel like would have been the appropriate response there. But it was a beautiful scene. Really, really wonderful. You were on the verge of tears with the Jon and Sansa reunion last week. And again with this, for me at least, I really was like, oh, I love these people. Please get your act together and make out already. Maybe cure up the cootie spot first, but then make out.
Yeah, I command you to get better.
Yeah, I command you to make out with me. Please, let's get these two people making out.
In front of Dario, come on.
Yeah, in front of Dario. Dario could be like, all right, I'll take this sweet butt elsewhere. He's not going to have any problems. He'll be fine. He'll be fine.
He'll be fine. The other part of that story is that we see now Tyrion and Varys talking about, okay, so, we knocked Tyrion's plan last week, but it's been sort of like, there's been no slaves killed. Only a couple of masters got killed. Seems like an easy truce, except that Dany's PR team is not getting the credit for doing this thing. It's one thing that it's happening, but it's another that nobody's talking about it on social media or anything like that. People are spray painting it on the walls. Hey, did you hear what happened?
Yeah, no, he really wants to start, that's his thing. He's all about spin and publicity and everything, and so is Varys. And Varys is used to having a network that really responds to him, and he does not have the birds chirping for him here in Meereen. So they wanted to do something about that, and they want to get the endorsement of R'hllor. They want the Red Temple of Volantis to chime in on their behalf because they're a big deal. We've seen them, we started seeing them in Season 5 when they were in Volantis. That was fun. This season, we'd already been seeing a little bit of that being seeded out. So they talked to, the head honcho of the Red Temple. Her name is Kinvara. Her full title, this is according to Game of Thrones Wikia, which is already updated. It's Kinvara, High Priestess of the Red Temple of Volantis, the Flame of Truth, the light of wisdom and first servant of the Lord of Light. So what is she, like the president of R'hllor?
Yeah, she's the head of the fan club.
She's the Red President.
The Red President. Now, Josh, did you happen to notice that she had a very similar choker to the one that the Red Priestess Melisandre had?
Rob, I did notice that. I did. And I also noticed that she is going by first servant of the Lord of Light. And is that just like she's Red President and she won the election, or she's like favored and so she's going to be first in line? Or is she literally the first servant of the Lord of Light? And we already know that Melisandre is so old that this woman's got to be ancient. Like, she's got to be real old. I would guess you take that choker off and it's going to be an interesting situation.
Yeah. Now
the things are going to spill out. It's going to be very
it's not going to be great. All right, but let's go back to her conversation with Varys, because that was eerie that she knew so much about Varys and that night with the wizard and the magic. And, of course, Varys hates magic.
Hates it.
So, yes. And so what's going on there? Was she involved with that? Did she just can look into the flames and she sees what's going on?
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And we could speculate about what happened. How does she know that stuff? I think we've seen the Red Priests certainly are capable of some weird shenanigans. Maybe not evil shenanigans, but strange things. Very bizarre happenings. We saw one of them bring Jon Snow back to life. We saw another bring Beric Dondarrion back to life. Not a huge leap to imagine that they could, be a little bit clairvoyant, or they can, read your minds a little bit, or they know things about your past, or she has seen Varys in the fires, much in the same way that Melisandre saw Stannis and Jon, and all of that. All of that you could parse apart however you want. I think the big story for me is how often can you think, how many times can you think of that Varys the Spider has been truly bone deeply unsettled by something, and just the fact that he was so majorly astonished by this moment and clearly creeped out, freaking out about the fact that this woman knows about the darkest thing that has ever happened to him in intimate detail. That look on Varys' face is really awesome, in every sense of the word awesome. Like, it is just like a very big, powerful thing for a guy who is so smart and so on the ball so often to have that, earth-shattering bombshell dropped on his lap. I think that's a really big deal.
Yeah. So, do you trust the Red Priestess?
Do I? I don't know that I even trust Melisandre. I certainly don't trust this one more than I trust, the woman who brought Jon Snow back to life. So trust is low, but I believe in her ability to do some whacked out stuff. Like, I definitely believe in her abilities there. I want to see her in a scene with Daenerys Targaryen, and when we see the two of them together, maybe we could start speaking the same language. But there's some interesting language choices in this scene, with Kinvara saying that Daenerys is the one who was promised. And we've seen Melisandre say Jon Snow is the prince who was promised. So there's a couple of ones who have been promised. There are two who have been promised right now, and we're not even counting Stannis in the mix. So lots of promises. I can't imagine that all of these promises can be kept, or maybe they can be.
All right.
We'll see.
Well, then let's talk about what's going on in Braavos, because this was certainly the winner of the most absurd story of the night. So we go back to Arya versus Arya 2.
Now, Rob, I know that typically when you ring the bell it says ding, but for one night only can it be dong. Okay.
All right.
There you go.
So Arya versus Arya 2. Now, as for some reason, Arya 2 is back to just completely mopping the floor with Arya 1, even though somehow Arya 1 was able to best Arya 2 when she was blind. But somehow, as they're back into this combat, it's no contest. Arya 2 is just destroying Arya. Okay,
mopping the floor with her.
Yeah. That being said, they send her out on a mission. She has to go kill an actress. And much like in the minstrel show that Littlefinger put on, it must have been like the off-Broadway run of the minstrel show really got rave reviews. And this is like the Hamilton of Westeros, that we are seeing like a whole reenactment of that.
Joffrey Baratheon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was definitely it's a fun scene on some level because the things that are happening are so absurd and the way that it's playing out is so absurd. But again, another unsettling scene because this poor teenage girl is forced to relive the trauma of her father's death, and not only that, but in like such a slanderously presented way. Where like the spin on this, and even in Bravos, people are apparently buying into the narrative that Eddard Stark was like a total chump. And I mean, I guess that's kind of true, but he wasn't like a He wasn't like a gluttonous chump. He was a noble chump.
Yeah.
He was a nice chump.
It's kind of like a vaudeville type show.
Right,
Where there's nudity in the show also.
Right. Yeah. So that was, it went on for a while. It was kind of a long scene in so many ways. Again, dong. So that happened, and I think for Arya, what's interesting is she sticks around long enough to see Lady Crane as the target. She's supposed to kill Lady Crane, who is playing Cersei Lannister. So Cersei Lannister being a name on Arya's list, this should be easy enough for her to scratch out. At least like sort of like projection. Projecting some vengeance at least. But she goes backstage, sees this woman, and she seems like a nice enough person. And she's like, I don't know that I want to kill her. I don't know if I want to do this. And Jaqen Hagar's like, doesn't matter what you want to do. Don't ask questions. This is the hit. This is on the list. So we've got some conflict. I mean, Arya just bought her way back into the House of Black and White, and already this is a bitter pill for her to swallow, is to kill somebody who she doesn't think deserves it. Where do you think that's going?
You don't think this is some kind of test that we've had so much of Arya, who are you? The girl is no one. We have Arya 2 calling her, the Stark girl,
right?
And you'll never be one of us. And so we know that she's motivated by vengeance. Who are the names on your list? One of the names on the list is Cersei. And out of all the people in all of Westeros and the Game of Thrones universe, the person that she is told to poison is a woman who's playing Cersei in a play.
Yeah.
I mean, how could this be a coincidence? I mean, I don't
think it is. Yeah. I don't think it is a coincidence. I think that I don't think it's that like the Cersei actress is in on it. I don't think that.
No.
I don't think that Lady Crane is, like, all right, yeah, sure, I'm in. Just pay my kids whatever you were going to pay me. I'm happy to die for the cause. I think that it's on Jaqen Hagar's part. This is graduation day. No one, if that is your real name, Arya Stark, go and kill this person and live through this situation, and then we will know that you're actually part of the squad.
But it seems to me you're saying that the test is, can you kill this person? I almost feel like that the test is the opposite. It's like that you would think that Arya, if she was no one, might not be so interested in like, wait, why am I killing this person? As opposed to if she was Arya, hey, you're playing Cersei in a play, you deserve to die. Cersei is horrible. I hate Cersei. Let me kill somebody who is acting as Cersei, and it's sort of like a proxy for killing Cersei in person.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that the humanity of Arya Stark, Arya Stark as a person who is seeing somebody who is good and innocent, or at least innocent-ish, is not, somebody that she deems worthy of murder. I think, the test is, death comes for us all. And like we've seen the Faceless Men, we've seen people go to the House of Black and White for the, the gift of mercy, who did not seem like bad people. They came for help, and they just get poisoned, and that's it. And they seem like totally innocuous human beings. And I think the test here is to see if Arya is able of going that far. And it should be a fairly easy thing because this decent person is dressed up as somebody that Arya is supposed to hate. And I think that she is, if she doesn't go through with that, I feel like that's failing the test. I think that they want her to go through on this. I don't think this is a hold your punches back moment, because I don't think that the Faceless Men are supposed to hold their punches back when it comes to a contract.
Which was the tougher moment for you to get through, when Joffrey was poisoned at the Purple Wedding, or fake Joffrey discovers genital warts?
I thought that they were both fantastic scenes. I thought that they were both terrific. I don't think either of them were particularly difficult. I think that they were great, excellent Game of Thrones moments.
Is there any sort of plot coming from that? Was that sort of like a Chekhov's venereal disease? Yeah,
Chekhov's wiener. Yeah, I think so. I think that Game of Thrones, they heard the call. They've heard people saying, Game of Thrones, you need to hang more dong, and so they hanged some dong. I think that's what happened.
And a couple of warts there.
And a few warts.
Warts and all. Okay.
Like, all right, you can have your dong, but it's coming with genital warts.
All right. Josh, anything else before we get into some of these questions?
No. I'll just end up talking about really gross stuff. So
Okay, let's not do that. Okay, of course, we will get into even more questions on our feedback show later on in the week. You can send us your questions, GOT@postshowrecaps.com, or with our voicemail line at postshowrecaps.com/voicemail, of course, and we'll have the Game of Thrones book club as well after all of this, so make sure you don't miss any of that by subscribing to the podcast at postshowrecaps.com/GOT iTunes. All right, so let's do some questions here. Sarah Blackfire wants to know, still trying to process that ending. Where will Bran and Mira go now, and can we expect any more visions, Josh?
Yeah, I think that we could definitely expect more visions. I don't think that is, I don't think that business is finished by a long shot. I think that they are going to be heavily pursued. I think that they could get caught. I think that that's totally possible. I don't really know how they evade the entire White Walker army without some help, and I don't know who that help is. Who do we know that's north of the wall right now? Not a lot of people. Could they reach the wall before they get, caught by the White Walkers? I guess. I don't think so, but it's not impossible.
Okay. So then this is a question from No Lies. So the cave where Bran had the magic force shielding the front entrance had a wooden door shielding the back? Is that there was a secret back door there?
Yeah, again, this was a very Lost-like episode, and the Three-Eyed Ravens hideaway was basically the Swan Station from Lost, where they spent an entire season trying to blow open the hatch, and little did the Night's King know that all he had to do was walk 20 more paces and just knock on the back door, and he would have been able to get in and just kill everybody. This war could have been over a long time ago.
Evan Starr wants to know, can Bran have flashbacks without touching the magic tree?
I don't know how that works. We haven't seen him. We've seen him green sea in the past when he was hanging out with Jojen Reed, and he didn't really need any of that stuff. But Jojen Reed was no Three-Eyed Raven, and he was not teaching Bran half the crap that the Three-Eyed Raven was throwing Bran's way. So I don't know. I think it depends on just how powerful he became. I think that certainly his time with the Three-Eyed Raven was, him and his most powerful. But how much did that, sort of download take? How much did Bran become the Three-Eyed Raven as the Three-Eyed Raven was saying, I want you to become me now, even though you're not ready for it?
Chat room is really floating the theory that Benjen Stark is going to show up to save the day.
Wouldn't that be fun? That would be great. Listen, we got to find out what happened.
He's just hanging out for years?
Yeah, maybe he was hanging out. He rolled his ankle somewhere, and he's just been biding his time. I don't know. The Benjen Stark question has been a huge one for fans in the community. Ever since the first book, which is back in 1996, no sign of that guy still. So if Benjen Stark shows up, that's gonna be really, really fun. I'm gonna be very excited if that's the case.
Riding Nymeria.
Right, yeah, that would be incredible. New direwolf, return of Benjen Stark, that would be excellent. Or maybe just Benjen Stark riding on a direwolf followed by an army of direwolves, and Bran now gets an army of summers. You trade one summer for a pack of summers.
Mm-hmm. This is from Danfo22. What is the deal with Sansa not trusting Jon and telling him the truth? Is this hinting at some shady things that will happen with Jon or Sansa's characters this season? And again, the Starks are legendary for their honor. They always tell the truth. They can't tell a lie. Sansa does not seem like she has this thing.
Well, she's not the only one. Certainly Arya has, a darker side to her.
Is it the women Starks that they don't have this problem?
I don't know. Listen, Robb Stark was supposed to marry Walder Frey's daughter, and then he totally just, lustily fell in love with Talisa, and that got everybody screwed. So it's not like, everybody. And if you believe the story, if you believe the straight story, that Eddard Stark is Jon Snow's father, and Jon Snow is his bastard, and everything like that, and, he cheated on Catelyn, then, there is something that's a little bit of a fallacy to this idea that the Starks are pure 1,000,000% honorable. So they can lie. They can, human beings are complicated.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
All right. Let's take some more questions. This is from R. Philly. Are we to presume that the last of the Children of the Forest are all dead and gone? Given the reveal, did they deserve this fate?
Did they deserve this fate? Well, if they built the White Walkers, the chickens damn do come home to roost. So it kind of makes sense that this would be the way that they would go. It sucks for them. I don't think that they really wanted this to happen. I don't think that when they built the White Walkers, they knew that their weapon would turn against them. But that's sort of the nature of the beast sometimes, is you build the thing that destroys you.
This is from Saints Realist. Is Arya told to kill the actress because she is the one spreading genital warts throughout Bravos? Do you have any evidence of that?
That's great. I like that theory. Let's consider that canon until proven otherwise.
Yeah. Okay. Then John Stevens says, not that I'm ungrateful for the Hodor backstory, but why was that vision of Ned being sent to the Eyrie so important for Bran to see? Do you think it simply is just that he had to put Bran and Hodor near each other? Well,
Right.
maybe and I brought this up earlier in the show, that Bran needed to see Hodor have his sort of episode.
Well, he had to cause it. He had to cause it. Bran is the person that causes that episode that, turns Hodor into Hodor. And like I said, I think near term, maybe not in terms of the long running mysteries of all the things that Bran needs to know in order to fight the White Walkers and save the universe. At least none of the things that he should hopefully be able to do one day are going to be possible if he's dead. So first order of business, let's turn Hodor into the hold the door man, the doorman Hodor, and I think that is like, we bar off these whites, we get Bran away, and then we deal with the future stuff for another day.
This is from Pitt, 1971. Could Bran be the key to destroying the wall for the Night's King?
That is the other theory. I mean, and I love it. I think it's really neat. Like, it's awesome, neat. I think this idea is, Bran the Builder is this great historical figure. He is, somebody who builds the wall, very legendary, noble guy. And then the inverse number of that a lot of people think that Bran could be moving toward is Bran the Breaker or Bran the Destroyer. And especially in the books, there's some things about warging that you hear about. Like, it's really inside the warging community, it's a real no-no to be warging into other humans. You're not supposed to do that. And Bran in the books especially does it a lot and kind of really likes it. And he does it on the show a decent amount of times too, and we just saw with very, 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 very nefarious consequences for a guy like Hodor. So whether or not it was like an intentional thing that Bran would somehow be involved in, like going in league with the Night's King, I think a lot of people have expected some sort of dark turn for Bran. Tonight was definitely a dark turn for Bran. Whether or not he wittingly or unwittingly takes a darker turn in the future, I think is absolutely on the table. I think that Bran certainly is linked to that wall. And the question for me is he building it, is he defending it, or is he breaking the thing down? But he's instrumental to that wall. I really think that that's a big part of Bran's story eventually.
It would seem weird to me to have Bran as a young man break the wall and then as sometime in the future go back in time and build the wall.
Yeah, well, he would be fixing a mistake. He would be atoning for a really big error that he made in his past. And given the Hodor thing that we saw tonight, things that strike you as strange are very much in play right now.
Okay. All right. Well, Josh, we will discuss all this and much more when we reconvene later on this week. Josh, I didn't ask you at the top of the show, what sort of things are you working on for The Hollywood Reporter?
I am going to be, hopefully I'm going to try and talk to Christian Nairn, who plays Hodor. I'm hoping to track him down, trying to get that in the works. That's kind of in the works right now. I am going to be talking to Bran himself once again, my best friend, Isaac Hempstead Wright. I will try and talk to him this week as well. So keep an eye out for that stuff. And who knows what else will pop up along the way. But I'll be writing furiously for THR, all about Game of Thrones, all week long. So check that stuff out, thr.com/Game of Thrones, if you like reading my things.
Okay. Of course, also Josh has got the book club on the way as well this week, so
Yeah.
a lot to unpack here on a very busy Game of Thrones week. And Josh, this is the halftime show. We're halfway home.
Halfway home.
Hold the door. We're halfway there.
Yeah, no, this season is really flying by, and it was definitely a huge question, like coming into it. What's it going to feel like to experience this story on the show for the first time instead of the books? For a lot of the people who come into it book first, it's been real fun in my opinion. I'm loving this season. I thought this episode was insane and heartbreaking, but also there were moments like the Jorah thing was so beautiful. But last week we were talking about the happiest episode of Game of Thrones maybe. For you, do you feel like this is its opposite number? Is this the saddest episode of Game of Thrones ever?
I mean, I love Hodor. We love Hodor. We
Red
love
Wedding
Summer.
still.
I mean, the Red Wedding has to be,
they were,
number one. And if not, Ned Stark dying. I think that's probably 1, 2.
But this is this episode was like some crazy sort of like Red Wedding hard home mashup. Like it was like some sort of like jam between like this insane, unexpected White Walker action and then losing such a beloved icon. So I think that this is going to be a historical episode for sure. I think that this is potentially top 10 territory, I think.
Historical ramifications all around. All right, Josh, what's the hashtag tonight?
Ooh, what did we get? We had Red President was in there.
Social Marindia.
Social Marindia.
Checo's venereal disease. So many different things.
Yeah, okay. I don't think we need to do that last one. I think that we can veer away from that territory. Does the chat room have any suggestions, Rob?
Okay. Not yet. We'll see. Also, thanks so much to Alex Kidwell behind the scenes for pulling all of the questions down for us as well. Now, Josh, how much do you think that tickets are going for that production of the history of Westeros?
Yeah, I think that it goes like you can there's a lottery system, like you can really if you're lucky, but it's really hard to get those lottery tickets. But if you want to buy them on the Black Dragon market, it goes for about 600 dragons. This is a
600 dragons. Wow.
Yeah, pricey ticket. Pricey ticket.
Okay. All right. So Josh, what was your call for the hashtag?
Let's just go Red President is fine.
Okay, Red President.
Whatever you want to do is good.
All right. How about a halftime show?
How about a halftime show? Is that what we're going to do right now? Who's going to be...
No, I meant the hashtag halftime show.
Sure, that's fine. I thought that you were asking me to do a halftime.
That would be a closing show because we're about to end.
Yeah. No music for me for the next little while.
All right.
We already got a little earlier.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any more of our Game of Thrones coverage. PostShowRecaps.com/GOT iTunes or in the main Post-Show Recaps feed. Working on a lot of stuff. Josh Wigler and Antonio Mazzaro are recapping Mr. Robot Season 1.
Mr. Robot.
Yes, I am brushing up on my Mr. Robot as well. Check out that podcast feed. And myself and Alex Kidwell will be back tomorrow with the Fear the Walking Dead mid-season finale.
Nice. Awesome. I hope it's good.
Oh, yeah. It's huge. Yeah. Huge stuff. They're time traveling, Josh.
No, stop it.
Yes.
Stop it.
Yes.
I did hear it took a turn for the lost, but I went, no, I am really behind on that show.
Okay. All right. Well, good stuff all around. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. Looking forward to reading your comments on postshowrecaps.com. Take care. Bye.
Bye.